There's nothing more meaningful to me than that moment when the student or the cast member or the actor gets the, oh, this is why we're doing it. Like, that kind of, like, spark of, like, this has more meaning than we're just going to put on a silly little play or written by a guy who lived and died 400 years ago kind of thing. Like, there is always more message behind the words and what we're saying than just the person who wrote it.
I'm feeling queer today.
Hi, my name is Lily, and you're listening to a bonus episode of I'm Feeling Queer Today, the podcast that amplifies the voices of queer youth. This fall, I had the privilege of helping to put on a production of William Shakespeare's Much Ado About Nothing with a pretty uniquely queer, trans, and neurodiverse cast, crew, and creative team. I had the time of my life. In fact, it was so wonderful. I met up with a few members of the cast and creative team more recently to talk about our experiences working on this production, queering the arts, the importance of theater, and some of our visions of a perfect future. Without further ado, some of the remarkable people behind Much Ado About Nothing.
My name is Talia Pott. I use she and they pronouns interchangeably, and I am a senior at Mount Holyoke College, and I am the director for this project, and I'm just really excited to talk about our vision and our goal and how we are creating safe spaces, and how we can use our voices as young people and our gifts as artists and young artists to really just share our voice and our humanity out to the world and say that we are here and we're not going to go anywhere.
My name is Izzy. My pronouns are they and he. I am a junior, so class of 26. I was Beatrice, and I got involved because I was so excited to see that we were doing Much Ado About Nothing, which is my favorite. It was such an amazing experience, and I'm so glad that I auditioned because I almost didn't.
I'm Charlie. I use she or they pronouns. I am a senior at Mount Holyoke, and I played Don John, Ursula, and Dogberry in Much Ado. I love Shakespeare, and I specifically love this play because during the pandemic, I just watched the David Tennant version like 1,000 times.
I'm Lily. I use they, she, and he. I'm a junior. I was the assistant director. I'm just excited to recap. I had no expectations. This was a student project. Basically, after a really woefully bad, tragic audition, I ran into Talia again in the fall, and they were like, we saw you as a director, and I was like, hello, I'm not qualified.
And you held it together, and you went above and beyond, and we could not have done it without you.
Sometimes the best things in life start with a tragic audition. That's the lesson of the day. Can anyone give me and the folks at home the lowdown on what happens in Much Ado About Nothing?
Much Ado About Nothing is based on essentially two couples, Beatrice and Benedict and Hero and Claudio. Hero and Claudio are the classic couple, so they're kind of the beginning of the plot, which is, everyone wants them to fall in love, everyone wants them to get married, except for Don John, who causes problems and keeps trying to make Claudio believe that Hero is not faithful. At the same time, there is Beatrice and Benedict, who start out the show hating one another, and just having like verbal banter back and forth the whole time. And then somebody says, you know what would be so funny and so good? If they kissed. Then everyone starts trying to get these two together while also trying to combat whatever's happening with Claudio and Hero and Don John. In the end, there is this big dramatic scene where, spoilers, Claudio shames Hero. Claudio's, the wedding is called off, and Beatrice and Benedict confess their love over that because that's the appropriate time. In the end, everything gets solved because miscommunications are cleared up, and there's a double wedding.
And everything's solved because of the efforts of Dogberry, the film's real hero.
Correct.
Sorry, I was method acting.
And also because Shakespeare comedy will Shakespeare comedy. And if it's not tragedy and people aren't dying, there will be a wedding that solves miscommunication, and for some reason there's multiple weddings.
There's a fake death. There's a fake death.
That is true. That is true.
This close to being a tragedy.
Y'all did deep character work for this. When Talia called meetings, I was like, what even we gonna do? And then Charlie, you said Ursula's passion was the harmonica. And I was like, perfect.
I forgot that I ever said that.
That feels like a queer instrument. So anyway, this is a heterosexual story written by William Shakespeare 400 years ago. It is not without its problems, but queer people everywhere have been having their grubby little hands all over it for many centuries.
At least in my opinion, 23-year-old me, there's something inherently queer about two people who operate in very different gender roles and then throughout the play cross over into the other gender roles. And that's literally what happens on paper without even reading into it. If we go by gender standards, the fact that, again, spoiler, Benedict is Gaston, if you will. He's very rambunctious. He is, in fact, the prince's jester. And then he's like, actually, I'm going to have a feminist awakening and I'm not going to stand for the BS that is happening. And he really defies gender roles by kind of being the only quote-unquote masculine character in the play that actually not just defends a woman, but defends a woman who was quote unquote in the wrong. And I mean, if we're talking about that scene in particular, I don't know how to say this other than Beatrice's Transmasc. The most iconic monologue from the play, arguably, is quite literally her expressing that she will die if she has to continue being a woman.
And she's real for that.
This was my first time ever playing male in any like project ever. I think that like there's such drama in Don John. He's so, like, for lack of a better word, he's very campy to me. He's very dramatic. He's very melodramatic, and like he loves to like live in that area of melodrama and like, you know, self-pity. The direction that I decided to take it in my performance was the angle of, well, Don John is in love with Claudio, which is what motivates his actions. It's not that much of a crazy read. He literally calls him the exquisite Claudio.
You don't call your homies exquisite?
He's really, really focused on him. It's not, you know, get everybody in this marriage to stop being happy for just because I hate happiness. It's like very focused in. Found that very fascinating. I think a lot of people do. I'm definitely not the first person to think of this or to read this in the play. It's pretty well established.
And sometimes having a queer villain is all the camp that you need. Especially when every single other character is also queer-coded.
Doing what Disney could never.
Yes. And I also think one of my favorite things about playing him as like a queer-coded villain is that in classic Shakespeare fashion, he just disappears. He's like a loose plot thread. They're like, he left and he never like gets to be punished for any of it. He just has a happy ending. He leaves. I always pictured him like on the beach somewhere. He went to like Miami perhaps, and he's just enjoying himself.
Gay rights, even for Don John.
Support gay rights and gay wrongs.
I left rehearsal for about 10 minutes, and when I came back, Ursula was a lesbian. And that was a good day at the office.
Like, hey, single woman, why not? She has moments where she's flirting-esque with some of her gal pals. I do want to touch on the important dynamics and friendships come up with that, because it's one of Shakespeare's most consistent women supporting women plays.
Before I shuttle us along, Izzy, do you want to talk the sort of transmasculinity of Beatrice?
I love Beatrice. She has been one of my favorite characters in literature for a very long time. We all know this, but I named my car after her well before this show. And for a very long time, I have read her as some sort of transmasc or like butch character who very much, I've always really loved interpreting her as like, she has always been into women. And then all of a sudden she falls for this guy, just like, God bless America, why this one? I've always really loved that aspect of her, and it's what made me really connect to her. So I'm really glad that I was able to play with that, and I was given a production in a space where that was like what we wanted to do with my favorite character. And it also like helped that I also share those identities. So I was able to like bring that to the character in an authentic way.
We're very happy that we could have you. You did incredibly. And as always, I am a Beatrice manspreading truther.
Exactly.
All of us attend Mount Holyoke College, which is a gender diverse women's college. That basically means our student body is made up of everybody but cisgender men. It's a fabulous vibe. And we found ourselves, not intentionally, I believe, but with an almost completely trans cast and crew, which is a pretty unique situation to find themselves in. And we were in a very neurodiverse space as well. So was this experience meaningful? And what's the power of theater?
First, like one of the main perspectives that I'm coming from is that of an educator and a director. There's nothing more meaningful to me than that moment when the student or the cast member or the actor gets the, oh, this is why we're doing it. Like that kind of like spark of like, this has more meaning than we're just going to put on a silly little play or written by a guy who lived and died 400 years ago kind of thing. Like there is always more message behind the words and what we're saying than just the person who wrote it.
One thing I really valued about working in this space with queer, trans, neurodivergent people was our check-ins every day. That was like a big thing for me that I had never experienced before, was just like constantly checking in with people, constantly just working together to make sure that it was a good space, a safe space, and taking heavy scenes with grace and just making things feel more comfortable for everyone as much as we could. I loved that we had the space to make queer jokes in the show and out of the show, and just like at the heart of it, developing like queer community was really amazing too around this show. Especially like we had rehearsal on election night, and then the day after the election, our whole campus had something called Primal Scream, which we all like go out on the green and just yell. And I remember 3 or 4 or 5 of us leaving rehearsal the second we heard screaming and just like bolting to the field and like screaming together as a cast, because we were like, the world is ending, but at least we've got like this space for one another and we've got these people who care. So working with those people was really amazing. And then just creating a show that had so many little, like, even if nobody else knew it, our own little bits of like, oh, this is definitely queer.
I think one of the things that was most, you kind of touched on it a little, but just the idea that we didn't really have to explain a lot of stuff to each other. I think that when you have experiences that are like in the minority, or, you know, a way of looking at things as a minority, I think a lot of people, you know, neurodiverse people especially, have the experience of like having to like explain yourself and explain like, this is how this is going to be, like this means this, I'm going to say this, and you don't have to be all like, you know, intense about it. It's just the way it's going to be right now. Like when we did our check-ins, like people would be like, I'm doing bad today. Today is awful for me. I'm in pain and I'm having a lot of anxiety. And I felt like we didn't have a lot of like the well-meaning but sometimes grating attitude of like, oh no, oh I'm so sorry, oh no, like why, what's going on with you? Instead, everybody sort of understood where we were all coming from. And it was instead like a much more genuine feeling support network of just like, we're here for you. If you need anything, let us know. And there was, I think, a lot of trust in each other that we were going to be able to vocalize our needs. And I think it was a really, like, just a really healthy working space where everyone felt very comfortable expressing themselves. And of course, you know, being in a place that has a lot of queer people in it, it's just a lot of fun, and everybody sort of gets each other, and that's always a really great vibe.
I think this environment was unique because in the world at large, but in the theater world especially, if you have an acting background, a lot of what is ingrained into you is that you need to be seen as castable as possible, which is code for straight. and cis or able-bodied. And I think that pressure was completely off in this environment because I could walk into the room and I could feel like, okay, no, these people see me, they know who I am, and I don't need to be worried about that. I don't need to try to be someone that I'm not in order to be allowed to be in this space. As we're recording this, an episode that we recorded a while ago in the summer about disability and queerness has just dropped. And like the true thing about working with me is that working with me will be more work than it would be to work with a neurotypical or able-bodied person. It just will be. It is more work. It's more difficult. It takes more time. It takes more patience. And usually I'm always aware of that. But as we got into the process, I was like, oh, okay, nobody's here is trying to catch me being who I am, I guess. So it felt very safe. It felt very wonderful. And I love making a queer little play. And I loved our gay little costumes. Charlie, we put you in this fabulous embroidered shirt with a horse button. The top button was a horse. We found that shirt and I was like, Charlie must fit in this. We're gonna Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants this. I am obsessed with this little shirt.
I really loved that we put both Beatrice and Benedict in corsets, and that mine almost gave me a more masculine silhouette than Benedict's did. I thought that was really good.
Corsets are the OG binders.
Yeah, because it was like the one that I had was very like flattening, and then like Benedict's was just like a little like cinch waist kind of, and I thought that was really good.
You're also brave for doing so much shenanigans in extremely restrictive or hot costumes. I had some heroic costume changes happening. I was in the wings in like a tank top fighting for my life.
One of the ways that I think was most meaningful for me for creating a safe space and an accessible space was creating a way that we can just really be in touch with ourselves and not just our roles. Actors occasionally have the tendency to lose themselves in the role, and my first priority whenever I'm working on a project, if I'm in a leadership role in that project, is to encourage and implore whoever is working on it to not do that. I knew from the get-go that I wanted to queer the show, and the way that it just happened was that for whatever crossover reason, there were a lot of also neurodiverse people in the show. And I think that what ended up happening is we had an opportunity, and I hope to say that we really seized that opportunity to really explore what it means to make accessible theater. Shakespeare can be famously inaccessible. Going almost line by line, really like diving into what the text is saying. What can our interpretation of the text say? I think that creates an environment where we are all on the same page. And even though we might be coming from different backgrounds and experiences, we all have the same idea and the same vision. Having our cast called the day after the election and having those people that came up being able to just like be in that space together, perhaps hold space for each other, as for the words of a famous Mount Holyoke alum.
The future definitely feels very uncertain right now, but I do have to ask you all, do you have a vision of the perfect future of theater? Like, if you had unlimited resources, unlimited time, what would a dream creative project of yours be?
I don't know if I have answers. I just am thinking like really, really, really hard. I love theater. I want to be a playwright one day. I feel like every piece of theater that I see, I like interpret in a clear way. Some of my favorite plays are Marisol and the Wolves, and Angels in America, The Boys in the Band. Like, there are so many really wonderful plays. And in terms of my unlimited resource dream creative project, I'd love to write a play one day that's good. That's step one that has to be accomplished. I would love to write a play that David Tennant could do something in.
Honestly, Much Ado About Nothing But Make It Gay was like one of my dream projects until now. I think about all the time how we made such a good space for this production, and like we had such a good space for the people in this production, that I remember our Benedict one day, like both of us were just having a horrible day, like neither of us were doing good, and we at the exact same time emailed Talia
And we're like, we know we're not called to rehearsal today, but what if we came anyway? Because we're both having a really bad day and we want the energy of rehearsal today. Please, please. That was one of my favorite memories, was just like the community that came from that, the friendships that came from that, and just like the space that we made. As was previously stated, I genuinely like truly unlimited resources, like just this again with more monetary and set building resources. I've been thinking about modern day, like high school setting. I think one of the things that I'm most going to take away from this is just laughter. I don't think I've laughed as hard and also been as productive in a rehearsal setting. And just like the people that I met along the way.
You've all heard this before, but I will reiterate because it's important that you know. Number one, all of you and the people that couldn't join us today were such gifts to work with. This is the first time that I've ever worked directing anything, and you could not have been a better group to have that experience with. And I think, like Talia said, I think when we wrapped, you were like, I almost don't want to do this again because it's never going to be this fun and wonderful again. And when I was very young, probably 5 or 6, my mother took me to see Peter Pan at the theater, and I thought that was the most magical thing I'd ever seen, and that I needed to keep doing that for the rest of my life, no matter what happened. And acting makes me feel really afraid. I've only ever acted, and it truly puts my body in fight or flight. And then we got to production for this show, and it was never scary. It was always enjoyable. It was problem solving. It was taking care of a group of people.
The most amazing spreadsheets I've ever seen.
Love a spreadsheet. And then I ended up following you guys into crew, which was lovely because I felt like I got to sort of look after you guys through the whole process. And I was watching you in the wings, and I had that same feeling of like, oh, this is the magic that I've been looking for this whole time. So thank you all for that. That was wonderful. And I'm so grateful, and I will keep you in my heart. Some of you may know that the Future Perfect Project and I'm Feeling Queer Today lost a beloved friend, mentor, and producer, the one and only Julie Novak, in August of 2024. Less than a week after her passing, I became involved with this production in a whirlwind, joyful series of events. I'm not a spiritual or religious person, but when these people came my way, I couldn't help but think, thanks, Julie. So, thanks, Julie. And finally, thank you from the bottom of my heart to Talia, Izzy, Charlie, and the entire team behind this magical production. Until we meet again. Thanks for stopping by. I'm Lily Mueller, and you've been listening to a bonus episode of I'm Feeling Queer Today. Subscribe to I'm Feeling Queer Today wherever you listen to podcasts. If you're new here, welcome. This is the final episode of Season 2, so definitely check out the previous episodes of our show, including Season 1. A lot of cool stuff there. If you like what you hear, please rate our show 5 stars on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And don't forget to ask yourself, how am I feeling queer today? For more information on this episode, check out the show notes or visit our website, thefutureperfectproject.org/podcast. I'm Feeling Queer Today wants to hear from you. That's why we set up our very own voicemail box for you, our listeners. Give us a call at speakpipe.com/IFQT. You can let us know what you thought of our latest episode, or share topics that you'd like us to cover on the pod. Who knows? We might just include your response in a future episode. That's speakpipe.com/IFQT. If you or a young person you know between the ages of 13 and 24 is currently in crisis, visit thetrevorproject.org for LGBTQIA+ specific support through text and chat. Or call 1-866-488-7386. These resources will be in the show notes too. To learn more about the Future Perfect Project, head to our website, thefutureperfectproject.org, and find us on social media at The Future Perfect Project. I'm Feeling Queer Today is produced by the Future Perfect Project with support from Radio Kingston, WKNY, Kingston, New York. This episode is hosted by me, Lily Mueller, and features some of the cast and creative team of a Mount Holyoke College student thesis production of Much Ado About Nothing. Talia Pott, Izzy Messina, and Charlie Watts. Our theme song is performed and composed by Alex Massey and produced by Emma Jane Soslowski. Additional music from Epidemic Sound. Episode editing by me, Lily Mueller. Additional editing, mixing, and mastering by Emma Jane Soslowski. Thanks, Emma! Special thanks to executive producer and mentor Celeste Lacine and the Future Perfect Project team members Ryan Amador, Kiko Wan, and Aaliyah Jamil.